Welcome to National Mental Health Month and our discussion on multi-faith and mental health. Today we will delve into the intersection of multi-faith perspectives and mental health. It's essential to recognise the significant contributions that various faith traditions, including Christianity, Judaism, Hinduism, Islam, Buddhism and Sikhism, bring to the realm of mental health. Vocal atheists such as Richard Dawkins and the late Christopher Hitchens have argued that religious beliefs are detrimental to human happiness. There is much research to contradict this. Numerous studies have indeed shown a positive correlation between religious faith and mental health. Research in this area often employs clinical methodologies to investigate the potential benefits. For example, a meta-analysis published in the Journal of Affective Disorders in 2015 examined over 100 studies and found that individuals with religious beliefs tended to experience lower levels of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. This is attributed to several factors, including the social support networks often present within religious communities, the coping mechanisms provided by faith, and the sense of purpose and meaning that religious beliefs can offer. Furthermore, religious practices such as meditation and prayer have been shown to reduce stress and improve overall psychological well-being in various clinical trials. However, it's important to note that the relationship between religious faith and mental health can be complex and may vary depending upon individual factors and the specific religious context involved. We have assembled 6 speakers today who will educate us about various aspects of their religious traditions and perhaps some major preoccupations of those traditions. So I heartily welcome Dr. Nadika De Silva, who will talk about Buddhism, Dr. Peter French, who will talk about Christianity, Dr. Baghiyar, who will talk about Hinduism, Mustafa Poonawalla, who will talk about the Islamic tradition, David Marlowe, who will discuss Judaism and various aspects of that faith, and Karan Gandork, who will talk about Sikhism. Welcome. I hope you enjoyed today's presentation.
Hi everyone, I'm Nadika De Silva with a Sri Lankan background, working as a doctor in Australia in the field of emergency, GP as well as hypnotherapy. It is with keen interest I would like to share my practices that has supported me in my life in many ways. As of a practice, many of us follow a philosophy, religion, what you may call it, to bring in peace and harmony to ourselves. Respecting the values of all religions today, I would like to talk about the Buddhist philosophy. The teachings that I would summarize during my speech reflects my initial summative thoughts and a basic understanding of an original Buddhist teachings of Siddhartha Gautama or Lord Buddha. His philosophy was learned by myself after attending several preachings, meditation sessions led by an active organization in Australia, which operates also through virtual teachings throughout the world. Prince Siddhartha Gautama, or Lord Buddha, we all know, was born into the aristocratic family of King Suddhodana in the Shakya clan around 623 BCE in a kingdom named Jambudvipa. According to history, it is still under preview and reviewing where he was actually born. Despite that, Gautama grew up in a princely luxury shielded from the outside world, destined to become a universal monarch. He was exceptionally intelligent and compassionate. Despite supreme luxury, something drew him into the world beyond the castle walls where he grew up. At the age of 29 years, he realized that wealth and luxury did not guarantee happiness. This was discovered by him after many years of learning throughout his own experiences and finally attaining the enlightenment at the age of 35 years. Until the age of 80 years, Buddha spent the rest of his life teaching the principles of Buddhism. Buddhism itself is more of a philosophy or way of life. Buddhist path can be summed up as to lead a moral life, to be mindful and aware of thoughts and actions, to develop wisdom and understanding. From the day that a child is born until he bids goodbye or leaves the outer world, the child who grows up to be a young to an older person will go through day-to-day stresses, anxiety, bereavements, anger, frustration for achievements, and so the list can continue to be more. But, in a nutshell, the original teachings were a set of understandings on the true nature of the one's mind and behavior, now considered philosophical to bring peace and tranquility to anyone. The history tells us that Buddha's teachings were preserved by word of mouth through memorization down the generations for at least 450 years before it was transcribed to written literature in an abstract format termed Tripitaka. It encompasses the earliest collection of Buddha's teachings recognized as canonical by Theravada Buddhists. Many commentaries have been added since over the centuries. Teachings of Buddha fundamentally describe a law of nature that explains what makes us travelers in this never-ending road called samsara. This is fueled by rebirth, a belief in various forms in many known and unknown worlds. Our rebirth is dictated by our own karma, a deed that is constantly revised and reposted by our own intents and actions. Going to the core problems of mental health issues, considering the dysregulation of your own emotions, most of the time it begins with a hope and then eventually can end up with a frustration. Breaking it down further and analyzing it. Why would anyone be frustrated? Firstly, they start to have hope, get attached, build love, passion, and then grow closer to one another. All we do in this world is to satisfy our sensory pleasures in whatever the format we can. We have 5 senses: eyes, ears, nose, throat, and the mouth with the tongue. So we watch movies, listen to music, eat nice food, like lovely perfumes, comfort our skin with certain luxuries, common pleasures we seek, and chase to please our eyes, tongue, and the 5 senses. It is important to understand that all pleasures are mind-made and not something found in the material we chase. It's not in that perfume bottle that you have. It's not in that food. The liking is all in your mind. In other words, we are constantly chasing mind-made pleasures, and this is termed as asada or gratification in Buddhist literature. In Buddhist philosophy, the principle of karma is called, wherein intent and actions of an individual, the cause, influence the future of that individual can be from your current or previous births you had. So addressing the mental problems. What causes mental health problems? That may cause frustration, feeling desperate over life. For example, the following factors could potentially result in a period of poor mental health: childhood abuse, trauma, neglect, social isolation, or loneliness because you want to stay attached to someone, experiencing discrimination and stigma, including racism. That's all because you're attached to listening only to good comments from others. Social disadvantage, poverty, because you're attached to have a wealthy life. Bereavement, losing someone close to you because you're attached to that person who passed away. Severe long-term stress, you're attached to your comfort or someone else's comfort and doing something to achieve it. considering having a long-term physical health condition. You're being worried that your health deteriorating over the coming days. Unemployment or losing your job. You're attached that you should have a job, that it's the job that you decide your future. Being homelessness or poor, long-term career, drugs and alcohol misuse. So things like that, it's all because of the attached to each component I've told. Well, considering the fundamental principles, there are three that applies and explains most aspects of these issues according to Buddhist philosophy. Named in Buddhism concepts as asada, asvada, adinava, nissarana. Asvada means the mind-made pleasures. Adinava is named as its drawbacks or consequences, and nissarana is escape from it or relinquishment. Basically teaching you that the pleasure is a mind-made matter, not of the object you get attached to. One's chasing of pleasures will slowly fade away with increased understanding of the consequences resulting from asada, what I mentioned you before, and how it becomes unfruitful. Taking an example to explain you these basic principles, we'll take a piece of cake that we all would love to eat. Just imagine you are given a piece of cake and that gives you a certain taste. Could be butter, chocolate flavor, whichever you name it. But imagine if it was made by your own fiancé. You have an extra feeling of the taste. It's all because of the mind-made feeling. On the other hand, the same piece of cake, if you find out it was made by your enemy, it might not taste good at all. The enhancement or degradation of the taste that followed was made in your mind based on external factors such as your fiancé or being made by the enemy that promoted the attachment, which we call as raga, dvesha, or repulsion in your mind that transmitted a message to your taste buds. Asada is a mind-made pleasure or a delusion based on sensory perceptions. If you are aware of what your mind follows, it will assist you in monitoring and managing your thoughts that can build up as anger, frustration, or negative emotions. The core principles further explains anicca, instability, dukkha, which is called as suffering. There is nothing in life that can bring true happiness. Despite our struggles, we will be subjected to much more suffering than pleasures if we keep pursuing more and more attachments or try to satisfy our five senses. Since there is no fulfillment of satisfaction to be achieved by chasing all these asada, the entire process is worthless or futile. Well, when identifying any suffering, there are four noble truths about it. The four noble truths, which are called dukkha, dukkha samudaya, nirodha magga, is a conceptual framework which must be personally understood or experienced. In short, it is about suffering, the cause of the suffering, the end of the suffering, and the exit or the way out of it. So to start this process, the person needs to follow the 3A Supramudena, or the Lokottara 8-step guide on where to start and proceed. The right understanding, which means Sammaditthi, the right thoughts, meaning Samma Sankappa, right speech, which we call as Samma Vacha in Buddhist philosophy, right action, which is named as Samma Kammanta, right livelihood, which is called Samma Ajiva, right effort, which is Samma Vayama, right mindset is called Samma Sati, and the last but not the least, the right framework in mind or the concentration level, Samma Samadhi. Following all these steps, the ultimate goal is to achieve Nirvana or Nibbana, which is the ultimate bliss. where you leave the end of all the sufferings. Nirvana is the highest state that someone can attain. A state of enlightenment, meaning a person's individual desires and suffering will go away, and that will end the process of reincarnation. We all try to control the way we like it to be, a person, a child, the world. Thus, basically, there is nothing we can control in the way we like. That is the main concept of what I am trying to say. This principle is universal. We cannot change it, but we need to understand it and live with it. The olden days, when the Newton law of gravity was found, even before he found this, things were happening according to gravitational forces, wasn't it? Thus, we understand or not, things will happen according to a universal principle, a law known or yet unknown to the mankind. Suffering results from your attempts to control these laws of the nature. Therefore, try not to get attached to any perceptions generated by your four faculties or the senses that control your liking. This will allow you to be peaceful in mind and do not develop hate on these trivial matters of conflict, as the consequences could be disproportionate suffering. To follow and get a better understanding of all these concepts, meditation has a cooling effect by calming and reducing mental provocation and mental drive. This results in a reduction in nervous, hormonal, and other activating mechanisms of your body, required to facilitate actions provoked by raga or the attachments, dvesha, which is anger, or moha, which is the delusions in your mind. Finally, coming back to the conclusion of all what I've said. We came on board as a human to live freely and happily, not expecting to suffer from ill health. As you may be aware, meditation, hypnotism, and mental health exercises or relaxation can help you immensely to keep calm in your mind. The day-to-day emotions is all about emotion, energy in motion. Let's start this process from now on. Watch your thoughts as they become words. Watch your words as they become actions. Watch your actions as they become habits. Watch your habits as they become your character. Watch your character as it becomes your destiny. May you all gain the wisdom to find the peace within yourselves and be happy. And please note, my speech has not been able to describe everything in detail, which I am learning still too in my path. This was just a very short overview of the concept. Despite of the religion, despite of the person who started preaching all this, I would appreciate if you all can get an understanding where frustration, your hatred is coming from. It's all mind-made. And many thanks to Dr. Chula Gunasekara, where I have taken most of my references. And also a big thank you to the Mental Health Foundation of Australia for providing me this opportunity. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you, Jim. Thank you for the welcome. It's lovely to be here. It's lovely to be with you again.
Thank you.
We did some good work together a few years ago, and I'm grateful for the invitation. And it's always nice to be reminded what you've done in your life, just in case I forgot on the drive over here. There is this divide, isn't there, between religion and science, this perceived, divide, that everything in our world we must be able to provide evidence for, physical or otherwise. We live in a very rational world, yet so much of what we do in the course of our daily life can't be supported by evidence at all. Many of us are fortunate, including myself, to have people who we love and who love us. And evidence of love is not as easy to find when you apply the scientific lens on it. So, much of our existence is actually dealing with things that we don't have evidence for. What we see, of course, when someone loves us, or in religious terms, when God loves us, we put on lenses that help us see that in the course of daily life. I know my wife loves me because she puts up with my sense of humour, or and more profoundly, she cares for and supports me in my darkest hours and the times when life is difficult for me, and I hope I can say the same thing for her.
No, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Now, you did raise the time of your darkest hours.
Yeah.
May we investigate that a little more?
Sure.
In terms of mental health?
Yeah.
What are some of the stresses that you face as the leader of a church congregation, a very important church congregation, I might say, at your church?
Yeah.
What are some of the issues that you face? What are some of the stresses that you face in that role, as inevitably anyone must?
Yeah. So, much of my life is in the public eye, and this week already, it's Wednesday now, and I took a funeral service yesterday. I took a funeral service on Monday. I took 2 services on Sunday. Tonight I have a service to take. Tomorrow I have a service to take. 2 services on Sunday coming up. So I'm constantly in the public eye. I'm with and in front of other people, and that has some degree of stress upon us.
Certainly.
You need to make sure you've brushed your hair and washed your teeth.
Yes.
But you also need to be really well prepared.
Yes.
And you need to be able to hold a space and communicate. But for talking about darkest hours, for most of my life, I've suffered from anxiety, a generalised anxiety disorder. I saw my psychologist last week, who I see once a month, for her help and support and for professional debriefing, because sometimes my role is quite stressful. I'm dealing with matters of illness, of dying, of death, and I need to be able to have those people in my corner who can support me to allow me to do my work. So I have a particular fondness for those who are working in the mental health arena, not simply because I suffer from a mental illness myself, but because none of us are perfect.
Yes.
All of us have challenges. All of us has limitations. Life serves up all sorts of difficulties for us at times, and how we live with those and how we care for those around us who are living with those, I think is fundamentally important.
Let me just say, it's very brave of you to acknowledge that you have an anxiety condition, and I think in someone of your eminence and your position saying that helps other people to acknowledge their situation and their problems. If you are brave enough to do so, then they might be motivated to likewise acknowledge and seek help.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, a lot of people come to me for help. And I often say to people that, 50% of your work has been done by the time you knock on my door. And I would say the same thing here. Once someone's made the decision to help, to get the help they need, they're halfway there.
Indeed.
So I think why I like to disclose that is not for any other reason, but to be honest and transparent, and particularly with your audience and those people who are hopefully going to watch us chat away. A lot of people would assume, by looking at me taking services, visiting people in their homes, visiting in hospitals, visiting some sometimes traumatic situations, that there's nothing ever wrong with me. I've got my stuff together, or even worse, because I'm a priest, therefore I'm somehow immune to physical or mental
You're
illness.
an invulnerable tower of strength.
Yeah, that's right. And people do draw on my strength, but I'm human.
Yes.
And just like everybody else, I have my strengths and my weaknesses. So I like to actually share that with people, because people wouldn't think when they see me in front of 500 people speaking that a few minutes before I was terribly nervous or I was in fact terribly anxious. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Not at all.
Your community, your church community, no doubt draws a lot of strength from being a community. I'd like you to talk about that, but also bring the strength that perhaps you draw from that community and from discussions and being part of such a large supportive community where that support is encouraged amongst the community.
Yeah, and I think that's really, I mean, community to me has become even more important. Like the importance of it, I think, has become really underlined for me, particularly coming out of the COVID lockdowns that we endured here in sunny Melbourne, where places like my church and other religious institutions, that community was really stripped away from us. We couldn't gather together for times of worship and prayer, and times of eating together and laughing together and crying together.
And it was a very stressful time.
And it was hugely stressful, hugely stressful. And I, like many clergy of my faith and others, all became YouTube stars. We all switched to digital technology, and we had Zoom calls and we had YouTube and all that sort of stuff. But nothing beats being in the room together with a whole range of different people.
Yes.
And I think faith communities are one of the very few places where everyone is welcome. I look after a church in Toorak, which is a very wealthy area, and one might assume, therefore, that to be part of my community, you've got to be a wealthy individual. That's not the case at all. We do have some wealthy people. We've also got some people who are struggling week to week. We've got old people, young people, we've got gay people, straight people, we've got new Australians, people who've been here 3 weeks and starting study. We've got families that have had great tragedy. We've got people who've had great joy. And I think bringing all of those people together, we find strength in diversity, and we find strength in being with other people, because I think one of the real challenges that anxiety has given me is that it can be very self-absorbing. That it's my whole world becomes how I'm feeling, the sweating that I've got, the rapid heart rate, the nervousness, and I think life is all about me. But in fact, life is actually about being together, about sharing the journey, religious or otherwise. And I think community actually, when you turn up on a Sunday morning, in my case, to my community, you can't help but be drawn out of yourself, because you've got other people around you.
Yes.
And I think in religious institutions, in the practice of worship and prayer, that sort of horizon is even broadened, greatly sort of expanded, when we pray alongside other people and we hear in a way the things that are troubling them. And we say to ourselves, oh, hang on, this isn't all just about me. I'm not the only one who's suffering, or I'm not the only one who has anxiety, or I'm not the only one who's really happy today. I look around my church and there are all these other people who I need to be, I can't help but be conscious of.
And that I'm not the only one that's getting benefit from these rituals, from these prayers, from this common task, this common ritual that we're all enjoying and benefiting from.
Yeah, that's right. And there's a sense, I think there's a sense of being challenged communally, so that life isn't just about me and my way of looking at the world. And we live in I think a very individualistic society which prides, it is all about you, and your Instagram feed and the number of likes you get, and and that's very superficial, and I think can really cause problems when there's interaction with any kind of mental health issues.
Thank you so much for that. I think you've already answered this question, which is how can faith provide... Actually, probably two. Provide individuals with coping mechanisms to navigate stress and adversity and emotional challenges. You've already really just about dealt with that. Is there anything else that you care to mention there?
Well, I think yeah. Well, I'm sorry to skip ahead.
Go right ahead. I'm happy for you to skip.
Well, I think going back to the individual stuff, right? How do we measure someone's value? And in our materialistic world, it's often what we're wearing. It might be the job we have. It might be how much money we have. It might be a whole, the house we have, or where we go out for a drink on a Friday night, or whatever. There's all these sort of material things. Religious communities and religious faith teach us that we are valuable beyond words to God. And that is profound. That we are not the sum of what other people in our community think of us.
Yes.
Good or bad. But that we are made by a Creator who loves us through and through for who we are. Were we made perfectly? No, because we understand that only God is perfect. But to know that one is loved deep down by the Creator of all things, I think changes the way we see ourselves. That we are utterly valued and treasured by God, and it changes, I hope, how we see each other. That you too are made in the image of God, and you are of ultimate value. That changes the way, I hope, the way that we interact with each other.
I know you've won me, Peter. You really have.
But I think that's something that the sort of the materialistic world, the world without a sense of God and God's love in it, really misses out on, or can miss out on.
Which is a bit like the scientific method. You are only a sum of your parts. That can be measured and quantified, etc. But there's more to us that is perhaps unseen, but we need to be acknowledged for. To give us our full scope and appreciation of ourselves as human beings.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I suppose we're talking about a soul, aren't we, in a sense?
Yeah, but I think it is particularly about understanding our own value.
Yes.
That so much of our world tells us that, well, if you're not good looking, if you're not successful, if you're not living in a great house or wearing the right clothes or whatever, that really you're either a second or a third rate citizen. I think in the mental health arena, I think mental illness is treated differently to physical illness. I had an X-ray yesterday of my wrist because I think I've sprained it or broken it, and I go to my doctor and I tell people I've got a sprained wrist. Everyone doesn't give it a moment's thought. If I say to people, oh, well, I've got an anxiety disorder, so I'm going to see my psychologist, people go, oh. And we're still at that point, I think, communally, of a difference between these types of illness. But we're human. This is part of who we are, and we live in a very stressful time. Hyper competition, constant barrage of information about all the worst things in the world. All you got to do is look at your news feed or watch the news, and it's one. Seems to me, anyway, it's gonna be one bad story after the next.
Oh, I would agree with that.
And if you weren't sad before you watched the news, you usually are afterwards. So I think faith starts to really counter that in a very significant way. You start to look for the good in yourself, and you start to look for the good in other people. And as you grow older and hopefully wiser, that takes on greater greater prominence.
So it gives you a kind of a yardstick, if you like,
Yeah.
and a more reasonable yardstick to measure
Yeah.
things, because you have a faith
Yeah.
in maybe a divine plan, maybe a purpose that can
Yeah.
combine, which can provide you rather with a sense of meaning and direction in life, as opposed to the worldly influences around you.
Yeah, and I think most people would, some of the highlights of people's lives are those moments where someone else has given of themselves to them. So you think about, most people would say the highlight of their life is their wedding day, or when they met their partner, or when they met one person who became one of their best friends, or they joined a community where they felt valued and loved. You might say it was the day when you won Tats Lotto, but not many of us get to say that. But it is actually about, life is about when we give of ourselves in the service of someone else. What can I give to help someone else on the same journey that we're both on, instead of the opposite, which is what can I take from everybody else?
Yeah, that was my best day. I got the best deal.
Yeah, that's right.
I got
Yeah.
the best
Or
deal.
like how can I rip someone else off to better my own self?
Yeah, Kerry Packer, I got the best deal out of Alan Bond. Only one Alan Bond comes along in a lifetime.
Yeah,
and that was his greatest moment.
Yes.
I thought, okay.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Okay. What sort of teachings in your church, in the Anglican Church,
Yeah.
help people to regulate their emotions and guard against negative emotions? And I think everything you would teach would probably do that. So this is probably a very difficult question, but I think most of the messages, if not all the messages, without exception, in the Christian church, the truly profound messages, do combat negative emotions. They do try to bring up the best spirit in people.
Yeah, they do. And I should say that the church hasn't always got this right.
No.
Christianity has been the cause of violence in our world,
Yes.
of suffering in our world, when it's misunderstood and misused or mistreated. But fundamentally, Jesus teaches us to love God, to love our neighbour as ourselves. And I think we're pretty comfortable with the idea of loving our neighbour. Like most non-religious people would actually ascribe to the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Isn't it the most profound rule? I mean,
It is.
I just really can't imagine anything greater as a single dictum to
that's
put
right.
before people.
And I think over the course of your life, it takes on greater and greater significance when you realise the import of that. Loving God for a religious person, well, that seems pretty straightforward too. Why would you not want to love the creator of this wonderful world in which we live? Sure, there are times when we might not love God because we get angry with God about violence in the world and suffering. Those unanswerable questions that faithful people have to confront. Why do good people suffer, for example? But sometimes I think it's the last one that doesn't get a lot of, the last sort of dictum that doesn't get a lot of coverage, and that is to love God and our neighbour as ourselves. I remember when I was at school, if you got accused of loving yourself,
Yes.
oh mate, you love yourself.
Yeah.
You really up yourself.
You're
You're really, you're just looking after you. But to love oneself, I think, is a lifelong project, and it's not to do it in a selfish way or a way that diminishes those around you, but to come to love who you are, what you look like, what your foibles are, what your strengths are. That's a lifelong, project.
Yes.
Can I love myself with a mental illness?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Of course. And I think in the opposite to that is being really hard on ourselves. I remember saying to myself, why have I got anxiety? why can't it be someone else? You know, why do I have to deal with this? And I'm like, well, this is the way you are. And there's two approaches here. You can hate yourself for it, or you can learn to love yourself and take on board, you know, that compassion for oneself and one's state and the things that happen in your life, and hopefully move on from there. So in terms of like regulating emotions, you know, that's a very specific sort of thing. And again, some people might look at me as a leader of a congregation and go, oh, he never gets angry. You know, he's always nice. But no, I get angry. I get angry at all sorts of things.
You're a human being.
I'm a human being, yeah, you know. But I think having that approach to life with faith and love at its centre, I think can be transformative, you know, and it helps those when we find ourselves being at the extremes of our emotions, you know, those deep, dark places that we sometimes go, there is love there. And those exalted moments, those high points in our life, the mountaintop experiences, there's love there, and to be grateful for it, you know, because it's a gift. It's always a gift.
Even if they're only the comet flashing across the sky in the instant
That's it.
and gone.
Yeah.
You know, but
yeah.
you've enjoyed it for that instant.
Yeah,
You've
and you can.
appreciated it.
Yeah, that's right. And a comet's a really, you know, that flash across the sky is a great analogy, because we can either choose to look at the wonder of the flash, or we can choose to look at the dark behind it, right?
Behind it, yes.
You know, you know, that's a good way of approaching life. What am I looking at? You know, and that's tough, right? You know, there are situations in life where it's hard to see the
positive
or the flash in the sky, but it is there in time. Yeah.
Now, I must ask you the question, because you, in Chicago, I believe it was, you implemented a dialogue. Diagnog? Where did I get that from?
I think it's a combination with eggnog, isn't it?
Eggnog. I think you got me carried away on wine.
Yeah. That's my fault. It's my fault. Yeah.
A dialogue between the Islamic peoples that you had contact with and Christian dialogue. Yeah. What form did that take? I'm very interested, and this is sort of an entree to the B part of this program with Imam Mustafa Poonawalla. So what are the sort of commonalities? What are the issues of division, perhaps, that you felt?
No, that's a good question. So I was a chaplain at Princeton University, which was a great privilege to be there. And I was appointed at the same time as the university's first Muslim chaplain, a wonderful man, Imam Sahib Sultan. He was 10 years my junior, and we got to know each other, and we said to each other, you know, why don't we just get a few of our students together so that we can get to know each other better and come to understand our faiths. And he's like, okay, that sounds great. There is only one way to do this. And I'm like, okay, you tell me. And he's like, we've just got to eat together. Right, we just got to eat together.
Yes.
And so we had a monthly dinner. We just started off with like 6 students each, and we just committed to having dinner together once a month for a year, and just see where it went, you know. And there's something about breaking bread, eating pasta, you know, whatever it is, a group of students and people just getting to know each other. And then in the second year, we invited a few more people in because people wanted to be part of this. I think it was the free food, and we said, okay, well, why don't we do something, you know, more substantial here? Like, how do we get to know each other? And Sahib said, well, he was really the brains behind this. He goes, well, look, we could talk about all the stuff that is the same in our religious traditions, and there's a lot that is the same. But he goes, well, why don't we do the really hard stuff? Like, why don't we look at the stuff that we actually disagree on? So let's look at how Christians and Muslims make decisions, like referring to what kind of law. What about we talk about this person, Jesus, who, you know, Christians believe is the Son of God, but Muslims see as a revered prophet, and there's a big difference.
Yes.
Let's look at, you know, approaches to male and female leadership in our tradition. So and on and on it went. And so for the next 6 years, we just kept having these discussions. And what happened was the community grew, and then other faith communities actually started to do the same thing. So then there was a Jewish-Muslim dialogue, and then there was a Jewish-Christian-Muslim dialogue, and then there was a Jewish-Christian-Muslim dialogue, and then the Hindu chaplain was like, well, hang on, I need to get in on this. So then there was like, and then the permutations all sort of got together. And it's, I thought it was a great gift because I got to know, the Islamic community. They invited myself and my community to worship and pray with them, and we did the same. So we had that privilege, together. And it's just promoting those things which even we would hold to our differences, but we have so much in common.
Yes, there are more that unite you than divide you, I think, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Would be my simple comment on that.
Yeah, that's right. And, it was one of those lovely opportunities to create a new community, which is great.
Peter, it's been wonderfully educative and informative and very brave of you to be our guest today, and all the wisdom, and I say that genuinely, wisdom and knowledge and experience that you've brought to this discussion. So I'd like to thank you very, very much for participating today. And we do have an audience here.
Yes, we do.
And this audience, I'm sure, is quite spellbound by your articulate words and thoughts. And also I'd like to thank you for coming here at very short notice.
Not at all.
The Mental Health Foundation Australia will no doubt keep up contact with you and your church, and I'm thinking of changing my church. I think I might become an Anglican from a United Church man.
It's a wise decision.
It's a wise decision. All right.
Thanks so much, Jim. Lovely to be here.
Thank you.
Namaste. Greetings, friends. I wish to begin by acknowledging the true owners of this land where we stand today. And I also wish to pay my respects to the elders past and present. Respected Mr. Vasan Srinivasan, chairperson MHFA. Respected Mr. Jim Gooden, vice chairperson MHFA. Respected Mayor City of Dandenong, Mr. Eden Foster. Respected councillors, dignitaries, and friends. It gives me a delight to join you all in this wonderful and essential gathering organized by the Mental Health Foundation Australia, the Multi-Faith and Mental Health Conference. It gives me sweet memories of being there in the year 2019 as part of the Mental Health Month. And I very much feel part of the MHFA family and consider it a great privilege and honor. I wish to convey my heartfelt appreciation of the wonderful, selfless work that this team of MHFA volunteers and office bearers have been doing under the inspiring leadership of Mr. Vasan Srinivasan and Mr. Jim Gooden. And it has been truly inspiring for me too, personally, to see the selflessness and the passion that has gone into this noble cause. So thank you so much for having me here. I stand before you inspired by my spiritual guru, my master, His Holiness Maharanyam Shri Shri Muralidhara Swamiji, to whom I pay my respects before I deliver my message in this distinguished gathering. It gives me immense pleasure today to share the message of Sanatana Dharma, popularly known as Hinduism today, with this very distinguished gathering. I wish to share with you the timeless wisdom that has been bestowed by Hinduism, especially in the context of mental well-being. in order to explain to you in the few minutes that I have about the relevance of this ancient faith and its teachings, the various practices, when it comes to helping us realize our fullest potential, helping us discover the true strength and power that resides within every one of us. I wish to share with you this incident that happened in the presence of my spiritual guru, His Holiness Maharanyam Sri Sri Muralidhara Swamiji, who is the reason why I sit before you today, who has inspired all of this. Many years ago, in our place in Chennai, South India, there were a bunch of youngsters bubbling with energy who had come to see my spiritual master. I was there too. They had many questions to ask, a million doubts, as you can imagine. Mainly about how an ancient faith like Hinduism and the various practices, the temples, the many rituals that we perform, the many practices that we do are relevant when it comes to making us successful in life, making us understand our fullest potential, helping us with mental strength, helping us with grooming our mind. How is all of this relevant? That was the discussion. And my guru had these very beautiful words to say that I recall to this day and I believe is relevant to what I'm here to share with you today. He quoted from this very ancient Hindu scripture called Srimad Bhagavatam. In the 11th chapter, there is a very beautiful conversation between a wise yogi named Hari and a king named Videha. That is a context. In that, the yogi explains, when it comes to love for God, when it comes to worship, when it comes to devotion, it's not just a single entity. There is gradation to it. It begins at a step 1 and then it ascends all the way up to the final step. It begins at this point where I, as a practicing Hindu, have a practice of going to the temple every day, every morning. I never miss it. I clean myself before I go to the temple. I wear clean clothes. I've had my shower. I feel that external cleanliness is important. And as I enter the temple, a whole sense of seriousness, a whole sense of focus grips me. I'm very focused. I try to keep my thoughts pure. I'm trying to focus on the prayers. At that moment, I tell myself that God resides here. I'm here to pray. Let me be focused. I dismiss distractions, and while I'm there doing my prayers, while the worship is happening, while the rituals are happening, I'm at my best. I'm at peace. I feel that calmness. I enjoy that time, and then I walk out of the temple. What happens? As I walk out, I find a man standing there. For no reason, he does something annoying, and I scream back at him. I show my anger, and then I go to work. At work, there's a person who's expecting me to be kind, but I do the opposite. Through the day, I show my selfishness. I show how mean I can be. I show all these characteristics with everybody around, with family, with friends, at work, with people that I pass by. It's a mixed bag. It's going on the entire day. Come next morning, as I enter the temple, I'm a whole different person. All the disturbances are gone. I'm calm, I'm peaceful, I'm focused on the ritual. This is the first step, not the final step, says Sanatana Dharma, says Srimad Bhagavatam. When I keep doing this practice dedicatedly over months and years with that discipline, what it does, a certain sense of purity descends within. Those sacred chants, that place, those practices have it in them to instill those positive vibes. They have that cleansing effect. It's happening very slowly, very subtly. I don't even realize it's happening, but it's happening. This is true, friends, of all ancient faiths and the sacred practices, the rituals, the chants that they have. That is why our ancestors have done this for thousands and thousands of years. It's not without meaning, not without significance. So as I keep doing this, one day, while I'm sitting in the temple, it suddenly dawns on me. It's like I'm two different people. I'm one person here, all nice and quiet and calm, and when I go out from this campus, I'm a whole different individual. Why so? Why am I being like that? What if I can maintain this calmness everywhere? And then I ask myself, when I do this, am I not also automatically telling myself that God or that divine force, whatever is there in that temple, is confined to those four walls? They can watch over me only when I'm sitting inside. So I behave well when I'm inside. The moment I step out, I just go scot-free. My actions indicate that I've confined God to that four walls, isn't it? But that's not true. He's everywhere. He's above, he's below, he's all around me. There's not one space where he's not there. So what's the point of being these two different personalities? Everything around me is, after all, his creation. Everything around me is full of him. There's not one place that does not have him. That thought comes to my mind, and when that happens, you know what? I'm a different person now. When I, for a moment, feel like being selfish and mean at another person, I tell myself, after all, he's my brother or my sister. After all, God resides in him too. So I should be kind, so that kindness flows from my heart. When I'm bitter, say, at another person that I encounter, I tell myself, why am I doing this? After all, that is also God. Should I be nice? When I try to hurt a plant, it suddenly strikes me that that plant is also God. I should treat the plant with respect. If there's this frail dog that looks like it's not been fed for days, I immediately try to shower my love. I would have previously ignored it, too focused on my phone calls, on my work, but now that is also God. Should I not take care of that dog? So my life is changing. God to me is not just in that temple, not just in that sanctum, but he's everywhere, in everything, in every being, in every flower, in that blade of grass, in that chirping bird, everything is God. That person who does not have a place to reside, I see God. That person who's starving, I see God. I see God in everything and everybody. My perspective is changing. So I'm full of love. My view has broadened. There's this tiny circle I'd confined myself within. Now it's becoming broad. Now it's becoming broad. I feel full of kindness. I feel compassionate. I feel that it's my duty to serve others. That selflessness automatically becomes second nature to me. So my mind is in a better state now. The second step. He says this is only the second step. You've progressed from here to here, somewhere in the middle. And then he says, the yogi says, my guru is teaching, quoting the yogi. He says, that when you begin to see that God everywhere, in everything, in all beings, it also dawns on you one day that you, after all, are also a part of that everything. You're not separate from it, you're part of it. You're also in that. And when that realization happens, it's a whole new, different experience. This is really what is termed as that highest step, that highest experience in Sanatana Dharma, in Hinduism. I feel that I am that infinite source of strength. I am full of love. I am full of that energy. That infinite cosmic pool of energy is nothing but me. There is not a shred of weakness in me. There's not a shred of selfishness. There's not a bit of greed. There's no small tendencies. I am strong. I am powerful. I am wise. I am love. And that is the ultimate step. Can you see now how a tiny ritual in a temple has taken me from this end to that end, where I realize that I am that infinite, eternal source of energy and joy. This, friends, is a beautiful teaching that my Guru imparted to all of us on that day. And this is my message to you as a representative of this ancient great faith in this very distinguished gathering organized by the Mental Health Foundation, Australia. Thank you all. Thank you for your patience. Namaste.
Firstly, thank you, Jim, for having me on the show. So basically, in every faith, people trust somebody or someone, even if they don't have a tangible evidence or a logical, it could be a logical certainty. Now, even after that, people don't see faith and science as an inherently incompatible. So if you go back to history, and we have seen a lot of scientists who are quite religious and great thinkers also in science. So if you take an example of Isaac Newton, who was quite religious, and plus he did scientific pursuits. Now his pursuits, people like him, took these pursuits as a mean for understanding the beauty and the order of the creation that has been created by a divine power. So in that way, they believe that faith encouraged them to go and take science as a means of understanding all these areas. Now again, coming back to, that was history. Again, coming back to past, and present, and if I'm talking about the Dawoodi Bohra community, we have a lot of scientists who are also devoted to the faith. So faith and science, again coming to the point, are not completely inherently incompatible.
Good, thank you. Now, faith communities can offer a built-in social support system where individuals can gain friendships and support. Do you see this as manifest in your communities?
Yes, definitely. Communities like Dawoodi Bohras are kind of close-knit, and they have a lot of social programs. And again, we normally have those programs within our Bohra Masjid or the mosque, and similar programs are there in other religious institutions like temples, churches, synagogues, and etc. So these kind of social gatherings give that support to the community. Now, people with a common belief or religious values gather over there, they meet each other, and through that programs they support the wider community. Now, if I just take a couple of examples from my community and what we do is, I'll just speak about two programs. One is called Khabargiri in the Indian language, which is just looking after or asking after. And another one is for the elders. Now, the first program of the Khabargiri or looking after is basically reaching out to the less fortunate within the community and trying to support them, help them in the best way we can. And now regarding the elders program, some of the elders, they do have their own house, or sometimes they are living with their children who are taking care of them. Now, even besides that, we try to bring those elders with the next generation. It's not their children, but the grandchildren. And it's not just their grandchildren. We try to bring the elders of the community, plus we try to bring the young teenagers and kids to get interacted with them. Those programs are sometimes held in community halls, held in parks, which is a good area for getting the positiveness, because it's a park, greenery, it's all good. And believe me, those programs are very fruitful and beneficial, because the elders spread the love, spread the experience to those children, and for them, it's completely something new, because they haven't seen that age 50, 70, 80 years ago. And they get the stories and, based on that experience, they try to guide the children of what is best to them. So in these ways, we try to support each other community members through these programs and these institutions.
Wonderful, wonderful. I particularly like work amongst elderly people, increasingly getting into that bracket myself, so that interests me. How can faith provide individuals with coping mechanisms to navigate stress, adversity, and emotional challenges?
Now, faith provides a sense of meaning and purpose, which envelops the hope and optimism. So, hope and optimism. Why? Because the faith, people with faith, they believe that there is a higher support or a higher purpose who is supporting them in their hope and optimism. Now, with this support, they try to, with the minds, they try to overcome all the hardships, and that helps them. And of course, we have a lot of stories and real life experiences that we share, and especially with the social gatherings and social programs that we share, that motivates the other person to bring that to give him that hope and optimism over there. Now, His Holiness, our spiritual leader, has a lot of emphasis on the tranquility of mind, okay, and basically to keep the mind balanced so it can fight the toxicity. Now, let's take COVID as an example. COVID, we all know what we went through. And I'll just speak about a couple of things that we did in our community. Is it was centralized, okay? And we had throughout the day, because everyone was at home, some people were out of work, some were working from home. The main challenge in COVID was the mental health. People were working, I was working from home, but I had a challenge with my mental health. I was stressed sometimes, sitting at home all day, not going out, all those challenges. Now, what these kinds of programs did is, throughout the day, frequently you had the online programs, recordings that you could watch at a specific time. So let's take just an example that, say for 7:30, I had the recitation of Quran. Okay, I can recite Quran, but it gave a different belonging or a connection when I had that online. And I knew that at 7:30, the complete Dawoodi Bohra's community in Melbourne are going to be watching the same thing. So still it gave a connection within the community, even physically we were separated. So that's how, that hope keeps on building up with faith, and that optimism keeps on building up.
Thank you. That's a very comprehensive answer. I think one of the problems that all human beings face is the sense of, well, what's life all about? Why are we here? What's our purpose? What's our reason? Faith does provide a higher purpose often, or a divine plan, and gives individuals a sense of meaning. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah. So the higher purpose always helps people view the life events as part of a larger narrative. So it's not specific, it's a part of a larger narrative. Now, I'll just speak about 2 points. One is, often the higher purpose comes with a sense of responsibility, and they understand that sometimes the events that happen in life do not have immediate answers, but probably throughout time it unfolds a greater plan. So that's one thing. And second thing is that because of that higher purpose, it always keeps you motivated and allows you to strive for your goals with passion and dedication. Because the idea is that it always keeps you within that circle of hope and eases the grief. Now, let me put it in a different way, that say for example, we had life losses, okay, and that was a really big challenge for everyone. But if you have faith, you know that is the faith is part, means, as I told you, it's a part of a greater narrative. So that helps you ease that grief for the dead ones.
Right. And of course, that's one of the huge issues that we face, that we all ultimately face an eternity. And how we cope with that knowledge in advance of it is very critical to our mental health naturally. Do you witness religious rituals and prayer that trigger the body's relaxation response and reduce stress? I mean, I don't know, singing, chants, prayer itself, or rituals that you have within your faith, do they benefit people? Do they relax people, calm people down, give them a sense of optimism and hope?
Yes. So let's start with that. Faith always gives individuals, it makes them or asks them to never give hope even in times of adversity. Now, His Holiness has also mentioned, our community leader, that whenever a door is shut, another door opens. So that hope and optimism should continue. For an immediate, if you look at it immediately at a short goal or a short time, you might find that it's a little bit challenging, but on a longer term, it is definitely going to give you, things are going to fade away and better days are going to come. Now, faith emphasizes love, kindness, passion, which will foster an environment where improvement and healing can occur. Now, in terms of hope and optimism, let me state an account over here. Once Prophet Isa, or Jesus, met Prophet Yahya, or John the Baptist. And Yahya asked Prophet Isa that, why are you smiling? Don't you fear the wrath of the Lord? And Prophet Isa asked him that, why are you so frown? Don't you believe in the Lord's mercy? So both the prophets both had their arguments, So the Lord sent the archangel Jibril, and with the Lord's judgment, that the one dear to me is the one who smiles. So with faith, you always have hope. You always look forward to the Lord's mercy or whatever optimism that it brings to you. And with that, it keeps you moving on and on.
That's a beautiful thought, isn't it? You're never alone.
You're never alone.
You're always in company, in an uplifting presence.
Yes.
To put your feet on higher paths. Thank you. It's a beautiful analogy.
Thank you.
What are the sorts of teachings in Islam that help people to regulate their emotions and guard against negative emotions such as anger, resentment, jealousy, hatred? What are the sorts of teachings that help us to combat those feelings, those negative ways of being?
Now, faith always leads you to prayers, different forms of prayers, different sorts of prayers, and prayers always nourish your mind. That's the main thing over here. And it allows you to live in the present and focus and brings your attention on the spiritual matters in the present. Now, with these prayers, you always feel that you are connected with a higher being, and because of that higher being, it helps you counteract the negative thoughts and bring the positive thoughts, because it keeps on, that hope and optimism is always there. Likewise, in our rituals, of course, yes, they are the 5 prayers in a day in the Islamic faith, and similarly we have something called munajat, which is supplication in a verse form, and it has a separate melody or a separate tune, or how you recite that one. Now, in terms of melody, I would just like to read you a philosophical statement, where 2 statements, in fact. In one of the books, it's mentioned, then there are rhythms and melodies that transport people from one state to another and change their outlook from one pole to its opposite. And there's one more statement which says, there are also rhythms and melodies which calm the vehemence of rage, dissolve enmity, and bring about peace and create amicable friendliness. So these kinds of melodies that are produced in the prayers bring that effect to the mind. So I think so. This is just one example, but yes, definitely people look forward to prayers where they feel that they are engaged with the higher being.
Right, okay. In what ways do you believe that your faith helps people to feel better about themselves and their sense of identity?
Our community leader has always talked about thanking the Lord even in the dire circumstances. Even in the dire circumstances, you always have something that you can be thankful to. That itself relieves a lot of stress or anxiety from your mind, because now you're looking at the positive things that you have rather than looking at the things that you don't have or you have missed. Now, also, I'll put this into 2 parts. One is a self-behavior or self-control on your behavior, and one is related to society, where it's related to another person. Now, what you do and how you behave, it's completely upon you. Like, so for example, if I miss something, okay, it's not going to affect somebody, it's just going to affect me. So how do I behave in that particular situation is something important that we need to learn. And one thing is gratitude. That is very important, especially after COVID. It's really important to see in that way if what things we still have with us. Now, by this, when you have that gratitude, you try to remove that negative thoughts that you have because you are looking at the positive side of it. This is from a personal perspective. Now, if you're talking about this from a society perspective where you are interacting with different people in the society, different groups, there is a saying called in Arabic called Ahsin ila man asaa ilayk, and it means do good to whom who have wronged you. Now, this is a challenging situation, and but it's there for our betterment, for our betterment of our mental state. So when you do good on those people who have wronged you, it's really challenging, because the first step of that for doing good is to remove your negative thoughts, to forgive that person by heart, and then only you can take the second step of doing good. So until you don't have the thoughts, you'll never do good to the person who has wronged you. Now, the second step is benevolence, which can only happen after you have completed the first step. And when you do good, you have a complete calmness of your mind, because you have done good to somebody and you feel good about that, even though that person has wronged you. So, personal perspective, how you behave yourself and with the society, these are very important things that the faith teaches us to do, by which we can have that mental support.
Sat Sri Akal, Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. My name is Karan Gandok. I am not a trained healthcare professional or a preacher, but I'm just sharing my thoughts about how the Sikh faith relates to mental health issues and the challenges that we face. The founder of our faith, Baba Nanak, when he started the religion, the concepts of Vand ke chhako, kirt karo, or naam japo were inculcated pretty much as the first principles of our religion. So in effect, what he said is, earn your bread the hard way, literally with your own hands, and share whatever abundance the Lord gives you. And don't forget to pray and take His name and thank the Lord. That concept then comes together as a way of life. When we talk about the Amrit Vela, or waking up at the crack of dawn and actually having a bath and then going and doing prayers. So allowing for that whole concept of meditation and then extending it to Sangat. When we talk about Sangat in a congregation, that means you are being encouraged to be social. Get out of your zone, go and sit in the temple and get involved with other people as well. So that's Sangat and then Pangat. Then we get into the Langar concept, where sharing of the food, helping prepare the food, helping in cleaning and washing, regardless of caste, color, or creed, giving you that sense of self-importance, giving you that sense of being involved, giving you that sense of feeling that you're part of society and you have made a difference to somebody else's life. So in a very simplistic way, the religion does actually encourage you to look after your mental well-being. In the culture that it sort of starts with, we have always counted the heart as your emotional well-being. In our this thing, we don't actually take the mind as being the controller of the emotional well-being. In a literal sense, the heart is taken as the controller. So when we talk about mera man chanchal hua, man mera kahe tarse, and then when you actually take it in a literal sense, why when Baba Nanak says chinta ka ki kini, kijiye jo anhoni hoye. So it teaches you that don't take stress, don't worry. Learn how to go with the flow. The big Lord up there has designed your destiny. He has written everything for you. And if you accept His will, because I think that's half the issue when you sort of, everybody goes through that phase of saying, why me? Why I have to suffer? Why this is only happening to me? And then when you get involved in all of these, about the congregation, as I said, the Sangat and the Pangat, you will realize that there are people who are worse off than you. You're not the only one who's suffering in this world. Everybody has got something or the other on their plate. Somebody has financial problems, somebody has health problems, somebody has relationship problems. There is nobody in this world who doesn't have at least one problem on their plate at any given time. So you have to just learn with that, and then that is why man nirmal karo. When we talk about in the Ardas, when we say Sikkha da man niva mat tucchi, that's what we're trying to say, that God give us that humility, but give us a higher level of spiritual thinking so we can analyze what is right, what is wrong, and do the right thing. The religious aspect of the Sikhs doesn't necessarily control our everyday lives, unlike some of the other religions where a lot of rituals are written that you must do this ritual and you must do that ritual. For us, it's a very simplistic meditation techniques, saying yes, do meditation, listen to Gurbani, do Kirtan, singing of the hymns. That itself is a form of manifestation of singing your heart out. And there is enough of those hymns that actually reflect your state of mind. As I said earlier, it is in the written sense we will say, Mera man dolta, darshan dekhne ka chao. My heart yearns for this, but it's actually saying your mind in that effect. So the choice of words lost in translation or whatever way we want to look at it, but it is all effectively saying, if you can control your thoughts and emotions, and if you can get involved in mainstream society as much as possible, because these are the normal usual signs of depression and mental health issues when people lose their self-confidence. They don't want to be seen with people. They don't want to go and talk with people. That, in a very simplistic sense, the religion clearly says, no, you must wake up in the morning, have a shower, do your daily prayers, go to your work, earn your bread the proper way, and then thank the Lord. So the meditation, the work, everything is being inculcated in that. And within that realm, we have to take that approach that, look, it's all there. Look at the current conflicts in the world. Look at the issues in the world. Everybody, as I said, is going through this different phase. But just bringing it in a very simplistic pattern, there is no taboo about it. These subjects need to be discussed. These subjects need to be addressed. There is nothing that says that in our faith that we can't seek mental help, medical help for that matter. There is enough medical professionals, especially in a country like Australia where we have access to Medicare and we can get all of this professional help. It's not a taboo subject. It's not a subject that needs to be brushed under the carpet. It's a subject that needs to be discussed openly, and accept that everybody might be going through a little bit of anxiety in their life, might be going through some depression, might be going through these other disorders. In fact, as I said, I'm not a healthcare professional, so I wouldn't even call it a disorder. We don't have to think that there's something wrong with us. This is normal. Everybody in their own life will go through these issues. So I think the point that I make is, if you just follow the simple doctrines of the philosophy of this religion, or for that matter, whatever faith you follow, that leave it to the Lord. His will always be done. And I think your faith is what will probably get you over the line. Because if you give up faith, you give up hope, then you've got nothing to look forward to. Thank you so much for your time. I hope it helps some of us out there. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.
You have benefited from our speakers. In conclusion, these various faith traditions bring unique perspectives and practices to the field of mental health. While approaches may differ, the common thread is the recognition of the importance of spiritual, emotional, and social well-being. It's crucial to respect individuals' faith beliefs while providing evidence-based mental health care. Understanding these contributions can foster a more inclusive and holistic approach to mental health, acknowledging the value of faith traditions in promoting overall well-being. The Mental Health Foundation Australia sincerely thanks our speakers for their insights and their generous donation of time and wisdom. Thank you for listening and being part of National Mental Health Month 2023.